Hello and welcome everyone. This is our Industry 4.0 Club for Thursday broadcast on people, process, and culture. And today we're having our fourth installment of our Autism and Manufacturing series. And I'm joined here with my co-host Jason Bean, as well as joined with Elizabeth Plouffe from Spero Careers in Canada, and we're going to talk to Elizabeth today about her initiatives around autism, and we're going to look forward to that conversation. We're going to start here with just some quick introductions, both on our club and what we do, and both myself and Jason and Elizabeth, and then we're going to have a good conversation here. So thanks again for joining us today. And as usual, if you like to have these type of conversations as much as we do, please join our scheduled broadcasts. We have them every week. It's Monday and Wednesday one week, and then Tuesday, Thursday the following week, and so forth. It's on 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Central, with various topics around Industry 4.0. You can check our website, www.industry40club.com. And you can also find all our scheduled broadcasts on LinkedIn, or if we do them on audio and Clubhouse, you can find them there as well. So thanks for joining. We'd love for you guys come back and add to our conversations, and hope we'll encourage you to continue to join us here on these broadcasts. Doing this broadcast here, feel free to enter any comments and questions in the message box, and we will bring those into the conversation as they're entered. So feel free to definitely join our conversation with good questions and comments during our talk here. Quick introduction. My name is Jan Pingo, and when I'm not here with these great people talking about various topics on Industry 4.0, I am the product leader for digital solutions at Ingersoll Rand, where we are working with IoT and working on making our equipment smart and connected. On to you, Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason Bean. So when I'm not doing stuff with the Industry 4 Club, my day job is the IoT market specialist for Pepperl and Fuchs. But the reason I wanted to start this series was I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 37 when I returned to university for management engineering. And being out in the industry, going to a lot of the trade shows and that, there was a lot of talk about diversity and inclusion, but nobody was talking about the individuals with autism or with neurodiversity. So I proposed the idea of putting out a series with the club to start bringing some light to this segment of individuals in the marketplace that were being overlooked. I met Elizabeth, I guess, about a year ago, maybe at the ADM North show in Toronto.
I think the pandemic just messing so for time.
I know, I'm messing up with time. We've had a number of conversations through that time, and she's graciously agreed to come on and be our guest for today. So I'll hand it over to Elizabeth to do a quick introduction of herself and give us a little bit of background on Spero Careers Canada.
So, hello, thank you so much for today. My name is Elizabeth Plouffe, and I'm the founder of Spero Careers Canada. We are a technology company that focuses specifically on helping to solve the autism unemployment crisis, and more specifically around streamlining the process for autism employment support people, so that they can help more autistic job seekers be more successful in gaining and maintaining employment. So I got introduced to the autism community the day my son was born. He was diagnosed at 7 with Asperger's syndrome, which helped explain a lot of what was going on with my little Manzi. He's now 24 and is successfully completing his second college run to be a welder and fabricator. And my husband is also an industrial millwright, industrial electrician, and going to be a commercial electrician. So high connection to trades and advanced manufacturing and the autism community. And I'm here today because we just wrapped up a year-long project that was funded through the Ontario Labour Market Partnership Program. And it was specifically designed to be a career exploration for autistic individuals and advanced manufacturing employers to sort of understand how the autism community can become a talent gap solution for the advanced manufacturing industry, which, as you gentlemen, I'm sure, are very well aware, by 2030 is going to be in deep trouble. So we need to get some solutions built. That's what I'm doing.
Okay. So the purpose of the study, what were some of the findings that maybe surprised you that you came across?
So we have to be, it wasn't a study. We have to be careful because that implies research, and then we get a wrist tap for that. So what was interesting was that we went into it, and one of the things we believed was that the school boards would be very supportive based on preliminary conversations. If you are autistic or have an autistic child, then you know what it's like to try and navigate the school system and get the right information to help your kid pick a career. It's crap. We did not get the support that we had anticipated with the boards that we were working with, which created some challenges in accessing the student body to offer these career exploration opportunities. What we also ran up against was the fact that autistic individuals, I would say for the most part, are hesitant to disclose that they are autistic, only because this creates another level of barrier when they go to apply for jobs. Because there are so many biases and assumptions by employers across all industries around what being autistic means, that it took, I would say the vast majority of our time was spent, and well spent, meeting with and educating advanced manufacturing employers across Halton region. So it was interesting. And we proved at the end of the project that there is interest from the autism community in pursuing these kinds of careers. And there is openness from the advanced manufacturing employers to learn more and work on their employee culture and their hiring practices to be more inclusive across the board.
Nice. So what were some of the myths that you maybe ran across from the employers?
Some of them were hysterical. I mean, some of them were predicted. So we had some ready, just because being the parent of an autistic individual, like I know what interesting things people have asked me. And then, being able to talk to people like Jason and other autistic advocates that we work with, we were sort of prepared, but it was interesting. So we went in prepared to manage risk and prepared to manage the accommodation questions. And that was by and large what came up. What was more interesting was that the advanced manufacturing employers are really interested in apprenticeships. We thought they would be more interested in direct hire, but they are way more interested in apprenticeships and training individuals themselves. And once they understood, I'll back up for a second. So invariably, when I got to connect, we had 59 employers that were part of the project, 26 of whom I did one-to-one interviews with. And invariably, somebody would say at some point, my son, my daughter, my niece, my nephew, the boss's son, there was a connection to the autism community, which substantiates the fact that 1 in 66 Canadians currently has an autism diagnosis. So that's 450,000 Canadians who are available in the workforce that we are not supporting properly. One of the myths was, we don't have anybody here who's autistic. Really? Got on the call with one person. I said, so how many employees do you have at your Canadian location? Well, 244. I said, okay, so let's do the math for a sec. 244 divided by 66 is 4. I said, so it's statistically likely that you already have 4 employees in some role or another working within your facility who are on the spectrum. The guy's face, like if it could have fallen off, it would have. Because what do you mean? I'm like, they're not like pod people. Like they didn't come in and, like try and take somebody over. I'm like, that just proves that you have successful employees who are of no risk, delivering good service and doing a great job. And you don't need to know that they're autistic, which is great. And you can take those lessons and, apply that. So those statistics, go ahead. Jan had a question. Looked like you had a question.
Yeah. So it's something we've heard in the previous sessions a lot as well. Is that there's a lot of myths around this, that it might become a burden to an employer, or at least that's their thought process, that they got to do something special. And a couple of sessions we heard it's exactly opposite. We've heard that like a president of a company said that's the best decision he ever made because of the morale in the company, by suddenly going back and say, hey, we're supporting this. And in reality, it's not a burden. You will find that out. It's just a matter of maybe there's a little bit different communication practices that you have to think about. Or there might be just, some being more being more appreciative and empathy wise around the employees you have. We heard one saying that we have to kind of talk a little bit different, or when we tell somebody what to do, we got to think a little bit without having any open-ended kind of stuff. And in reality, we find that helps everyone, not just the autism community when we do that. So what are some of the things that you've seen and positive feedback you've gotten working with these employers?
So the employers who've identified that they do have somebody who's advocated and disclosed their diagnosis, not a single complaint, right? So the perception that they wouldn't be able to handle shift changes, the perception that they wouldn't be able to follow instructions, the perception. One of the weird things that kept coming up was they would say, like, we would be talking about autistic individuals and they would bring up Down syndrome. And that happened a few times. I said, okay, so we need to be really clear that these are completely unrelated, nothing to do with one another. One is a neurological difference. One is a chromosomal challenge, deficiency, addition, whatever you want to call it. Well, they can't have a worker on the floor with them. I said, we're going to go back to the fact that I'm a tradesman's wife, and my husband had his arm inside of machine, and a piston released at 1,000 PSI and smashed his arm. Almost had to have surgery. Like, it was a bad break. He's looking at surgery now, whatever. So I understand the risks. I understand what can happen on the floor. And we would never, ever place an individual or actively recruit an individual or recommend an individual who didn't have the capability to operate safely on the floor for a variety of reasons. The first and foremost being, I have walked the emergency room floor with my husband and his broken arm in his uniform because there was unsafe work conditions, and that's what caused that accident. So we get that. When you look statistically at the rate of accident, there's a 47% accident rate across advanced manufacturing and trades across Canada. Slightly higher in Ontario, only because we have a very dense corridor of that industry. So statistically, you have more people working in something, there's going to be more rate of accident. With the disability community, they have a 98% better rate of no injury, right? Resulting in 7% rate of accident or injury across multiple industries. So we always talk about that risk. On top of that, for a lot of autistic individuals, they are very risk averse and very rule oriented. And I don't mean that in like a paint everybody with the same thing, but that is a typical thing. So if you have somebody that comes into the shop floor, and to your point, Jan, around being clear in communication and being clear in processes, and you say to an autistic employee, if you do X, this part of your body is going to be removed. They are going to do everything in their power to prevent that from happening. They will be aware, they will be focused, they will follow the checklist that you give them to do the job, and they will not create any opportunity for a part of their anatomy to be removed by a machine. it was an interesting conversation which was good. It is good that the first thing on an employer's mind is risk management. It is good that they are aware that their shop floor is a dangerous place to be. It is good that they are concerned about safety standards and making sure that all of their employees are safe. What is not so great is when, from a lack of understanding, they apply that risk filter to anybody who discloses that they're autistic and make assumptions about their abilities on the floor. They need, and the 26 people that I spoke to, the 26 companies, were open to learning about that. And when we talked about the risk and we talked about the way those things that can be managed, and to your point, Jan, that some of the things we suggested are good for everybody. What employers have to remember is that just because somebody hasn't disclosed they have a disability doesn't mean they don't have one. There is a very high rate of dyslexia, for an example, among trades, which is considered in some capacities to be a disability. It is just a learning difference, just like autism is a learning difference. And so when you put processes in place that only ascribe to one learning methodology, right? So if we give context around that, the learning styles are auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. So you either learn by hearing it, by seeing it, or by doing it. And when you only have your training model set up for one learning opportunity, you are forgetting that there's two other choices. I talked to one employer who, as part of the interview process, described what the shop floor was like. Didn't do a shop floor tour, but he's like, oh yeah, I take a great amount of time and I describe what the shop floor is like and I make sure they understand. I said, okay. I said, so there's a couple of challenges with that. Well, what do you mean? I said, well, first of all, you are assuming that the person that you're speaking to has strong auditory processing skills. You're assuming that what you're saying is what they are understanding. And you're kind of forgetting that there's a knowledge gap. If that person has never stepped on a shop floor, they have no idea about the noise. They have no idea about the smell. They have no idea about things moving and machines and whatever. I'm like, there is no way for you to verbally convey the reality of a shop floor. His response, well, that would explain why people come and they do the job offer and then 2 days later they walk off the floor. I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah.
So a lot of those things come up around the interview process, around the onboarding process, and around the biases that employers make around the other person's level of understanding of the role and what advanced manufacturing or trades actually requires. And that applies to everybody. You know, they need to broaden their interview tools. That's one of the major things we learned.
Yeah, and again, as you say, it benefits everyone. I mean, not being able to relate to what a factory floor looks like if you haven't been there, that will be everybody. So it's not just autism or other groups of people. It's everybody that hasn't been there. They will have no idea what it really means and what to be careful about. One other thing that I thought was also interesting in our previous discussions too is that people on the spectrum often likes structure.
Mm-hmm.
And that really means that when you talk about accidents, that's typically because there's something on the floor that shouldn't be there, or something else that's not where it's supposed to be. And you have people now that suddenly they will make sure that things are structured. It's one thing I've never seen any area that's more clean, because that's just a part of being sure that you feel comfortable in the structure. And so everybody else is now suddenly you will have less accidents in general because there's more structure to the workplace, right? So it's just an interesting perspective.
To that as well, though. Yeah, so there's consequences to that as well, in that if an individual is very structure and rule bound and they go into a workplace, and I've gone into a variety of shop floors, so I get it. But as it happens over time, things don't necessarily get put back in the right spot, or you find a way that works within your station to do things, or what have you. Where the challenge gets created is how that individual communicates to the supervisor or fellow staff their discomfort around the level of mess and what have you. So what has to happen as part of the interview process is that that individual needs to know who they go to talk about those kinds of things. Because if that's causing, discomfort, or it's causing anxiety because it's dangerous or perceived to be dangerous or whatever, the story that the individual could be telling themselves about the level of danger or why things are set up the way they are could be markedly different than the reality, right? So it's really important that employers and employees understand how communication around shop floor concerns happens. And it's not that the autistic individual wants to be critical or disruptive or anything like that, but if you've told them this is the safe way to do the job, and you've lost sight of the fact that other employees may have MacGyvered a bit and doing things a bit differently, some stuff's going to get brought to your attention.
Exactly, yeah.
It's going to come up, and like, don't take it as a personal criticism. Like, don't get your wrenches in a knot. Like, take it with the spirit to which it's intended, that you've told that person they need to be safe, they need to follow the rules. You might want to check your staff and see who may have changed things up a little bit. It happens. I've seen it on, I'm sure Jason's seen it on his floors. Like, it happens. Plus millwrights and tradespeople, they like things a certain way as well. My husband likes his tool area in a certain way. He comes home and tells me, he gets and he's quite a relaxed guy for the most part, but you touch his tool area and put things out of whack or take it without telling him or rearrange it or whatever, oh, he's going to hand you your tushy. Like, so millwrights have their things too.
Yeah, we all like that without tools, for sure.
Right.
So when you work with these when you work with these employers, do you have any like tools, things you give them that would help in different areas, like both the interview process, planning, or anything else? Do you have anything like things that you work with them on that helps them in the process?
So what we tend to talk to them about, we always start with where they are, because change can be a hard thing for anybody, and change can sometimes imply you're not doing it right. And we don't ever want to say that. It's not that you're doing it right or wrong, it's that there's just different ways to do it. So what we talk to them about is examining some of the tools that they use within the interview process. For an example, it was probably a 50-50 on people doing shop floor tours. And that's a really simple one as part of your evaluation and weeding out process. If you have an individual who walks on the shop floor and immediately has a negative response, whether they are neurotypical or neurodiverse, that's an indicator that this is likely not a good fit. And we were quite surprised by the number of people that don't do the shop floor tour. The other thing is doing a skills test. So if you are hiring somebody to do a very specific role, you need to onboard them in a way that demonstrates that their resume or the recruitment agency matches what you actually need them to do. There is a huge disconnect, especially when employers use a recruitment agency, and not denigrating recruitment agencies. They are a great resource. But advanced manufacturing is a bit of a different pickle as far as placing a body there. And there are skill sets for certain roles that are required that need to be proven. So the feedback that we got from employers was recruitment agencies, their focus is to put a body in there, and that doesn't necessarily help the employer. It is always wise to put that kind of screen in to say, okay, I'm going to, as part of your role, you're going to need to, and I can tell you a quick story, weld, right? So even if it's just spot welding, or you're just attaching, like not a welder, but if you need to do some spot welding, TIG, MIG, whatever it is, get them to prove it to you. Because an individual came for an interview and this place happened to do a skills assessment. And I've done soldering before. I used to do stained glass and whatever. So I understand soldering equipment, what that works, and I live with 2 welders. So I have an air compressor and we have all the stuff to do welding. We have a mini weld. I got everything. Starts telling me the story. The individual was asking him for soldering equipment. And I stopped and I said, did he think that this job was around soldering? He's like, oh yeah. So a skills assessment, even minor, for some of the things that are key to the role would absolutely help on every level. Making sure that you have some kind of video for what the role is, even if it's basic. But again, then you are doing the visual and the auditory processing, and that can open up a conversation. And no interviewer is going to hit all the points around what a job entails. And some of them could be a make or break for the employer and for the candidate. Once you get past the interview process, I mean, I'm sure there are folks on here who know who Commander Chris Hadfield is. And, you know, one of the most famous Canadian astronauts around. And his famous quote is, "We don't go into space without a checklist." So when you are doing a role, I think for me, that is a process check for the employer and for the employee, because the role may have started out one way and may have morphed a little bit. Having that checklist also provides an opportunity to go back and recheck your process and make sure the job is still the same as what you had originally intended. And eventually the checklist won't be needed. But this also harkens back to what we said before, that just because somebody hasn't disclosed a disability doesn't mean they don't have one. So if you rely solely on telling the individual about the job auditorially, you are assuming that that candidate can process and remember all of that information that way. By making a checklist a standard practice, you're double dutying the understanding of the role, which again reduces risk, again, within advanced manufacturing and processing, you want consistency on the product. You want to make sure that the job's being done right, because every time it's done wrong, you're losing product, you're losing time, and you're losing your order for deliverability. One organization that we met with, Parker Hannifin Canada, have a great system where once an employee comes on board, there is a vest system that exists for all employees. And it clearly shows who is new on the job, who is a supervisor, who is a manager, who's got 5 years on the job, whatever that looks like. So a different colored vest for each individual on the floor. What that allows is for any new employee to immediately and quickly identify who they need to speak to, versus going to the manager, wasting their time. The manager then has to get in touch with the supervisor. That supervisor might not be the right supervisor for that job, whatever that is. That vesting process, I think, is genius and should be in so many different roles, because it can save you so much time and money. Part of this process, and one of the pieces of conversation we had with employers, is that it's $4,500 to attract, train, and retain an employee. Every single time you don't do that process right, you are costing your company millions of dollars. And I'm turning this way because I have a slide that breaks it down. And I spoke to one company. I got to find it. It was something like 1.5. Here we go. So if you have a team of 75, for an example, and the average turnover rate within advanced manufacturing is around 37% a year of workforce turnover, that's $108,000 a year being spent on attracting, training, and retaining staff. When you get up to, say, a team of 1,500, that's now 555 employees. That's $2.3 million a year. Wouldn't that be much better spent on research and development and process improvement, and hiring people like Jason to come in and help you train your people right and, build neurodiversity in your workforce? Jan's on mute.
Yeah, and I think you're muted.
Nobody said that for 2.5 years during the pandemic.
This is better, right? You guys hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think Jason said that a couple of times too, is when you hire somebody on the spectrum, there are most likely to stay longer with your company too.
Yeah, high
So you have
loyalty.
less high loyalty as well, which I think is another positive to this whole thing as well. So I think that
Yeah.
there's just it is one of the things where we're Jason is driving this and we're talking about it. So there's more information coming out, but it's just the more you talk about it, the more you get people to understand really that this is not a problem. This is it's not a problem you
Mhm.
can't overcome, and you'll find that you actually have so much extra benefit around tackling the just the idea of what you need to think about from as you talk about the interview process. Some small changes in both how you communicate and as well as you say think about there might be something where you can add visual to it that would not just help people on the spectrum but everybody that don't know what it is you're talking about, haven't been on the factory floor, trying to understand what it is that you want them to do and think about. So I think it's all positive things, and it's just a matter of getting that information out and really getting companies like you and others that we talk to, spread that information out and make those connections in the communities to say, hey, there are actually tools out there, there's resources out there, there's companies that actually can help
Yeah.
you if you want to get into this, and you should.
By 2030, so when Jason and I attended the Advanced Manufacturing Trade Show, I sat in on a few of the keynotes. And NGen, which is an advanced manufacturing supercluster that supports advanced manufacturing businesses in Southern Ontario, did a couple of the keynotes. And Jason, who's the ED of, different Jason, who's the ED of NGen, got up. And here's the challenge for advanced manufacturing is that, and trades, for the last 25 years, they've kind of coasted, right? Because in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, trades were still a thing, right? Trades were still a respected thing, and everybody understood the value. And so there wasn't really a problem attracting and retaining talent in that capacity. And there was a lot of father-son thing, because if the dad was a tradesperson, then likely the son, because women weren't allowed still. But at the end of the World War II, it became more fashionable, if you will, to be in a cleaner job. So people were leaving the farms, they were leaving the trades because industrialization was happening within the economy, and there was more opportunity to work in a store or work in, a cleaner factory or whatever that looked like. And then we moved into the 80s, and of course it was the, age of the brick phones and technology, and .coms were coming out, and technology was going to be the new big thing. And trades all of a sudden got a bad rap. And I'm not sure exactly how that happened, other than within high school culture, there became a bit of a flip where high school counselors who were university educated didn't have exposure to trades. So it didn't sit top of mind. So gradually, as guidance counselors were influencing students, the stream became towards post-secondary, regardless of what that looked like for the individual. And trades became more and more of a somehow, the dumb kids did trades. And I remember being a victim of that thinking in the 80s myself, because that's what society was saying. What we failed to recognize was that all that industrial age revolution and evolution within manufacturing and product development and all the new gizmos and gadgets that were coming out, the introduction of all of these appliances in the kitchen, appliances for your home, new cars, all of that, the people keeping that thumping are the millwrights and the electricians and all of the people on the floor making those parts happen and maintaining the machines. I think we became disconnected from how products hit the market and are built. And so for the last 10 years, NGen and other advanced manufacturing focused organizations were targeting students, women, and Indigenous and new immigrants to fill these advanced manufacturing roles. But they didn't do anything to educate on the value of being in trades and advanced manufacturing. They didn't talk about the financial security. They didn't talk about the benefits to these careers. And they also didn't educate employers about the leadership and communication education that they needed to do to sort of raise the EQ on the shop floor. I know a lot of tradespeople, fantastic people. But if you don't do it their way, they're going to get you. You touch their tools, they're going to get you. If you're not fitting in on the shop floor, it does not occur to them to have a conversation and figure out why. It occurs to them to deal with it in other ways that are not necessarily positive for anybody. So what we also need to do is educate employers on the fact that you cannot take somebody from a line. So if you're in a production line and you've put your 5 years in and you've met certain marks and it's time to move up the matrix, you cannot make them a supervisor or a lead hand or whatever that looks like and forget to provide leadership and communication training. You cannot put people in roles where they have been a team member and now they're managing the team and not give them the tools to do that. And the last time Jason and I spoke, he made a really valid point, which was it takes 8,000 hours to become a tradesperson, and it takes no hours to become a leader.
Yeah, that's
how is that going to
be? Yeah, but it makes sense. You're right. You're right that I mean, it's not just about this topic here. It's in general, right? I mean, it's you have to make sure that when people get into a new role, that they're equipped with the tool sets to manage other people, and make sure that communication skills are maybe bumped up a little bit around, how you're asking them to do. And back to what we talked before, right? That having somebody on the spectrum in your team makes you think about that more in general, because you more or less have to. That helps everybody. But if you don't know if you have any on the spectrum in your team and you're not thinking about it, you might be losing out on not just the employees on the spectrum, but others that don't really get what it is you're trying to get them to do. So absolutely,
we can honestly,
a good point. 8,000. Yeah. I don't know if it's 8,000. I've heard about 10,000 hours and 8,000 hours, but you're right.
Well, it's 10,000 hours to master a skill, but yeah, but no hours are dedicated right now within most organizations to provide. I spoke to one employer, and I was speaking to the head of their Canadian contingent, but the head of the whole organization from the US was on, and that person happened to have an autistic son. And so it was at that point during that conversation that I said, so what happens on the workshop floor as far as communication, and does that create any conflict? Well, now and again, and it's interesting how the old boy network mentality comes in. Well, they've been on the floor for a while. Okay. That doesn't mean they're dumb. Like you can teach them and they might appreciate learning, leadership and communication. That was my inside voice. I didn't say it out to them. So I said, okay, when you take somebody from the shop floor and put them in a mentorship or some kind of leadership role, does that ever create any issues? No. It all goes great. I took him at his word. And I said, oh, good for you. And he just stops and looks at me. He's like, I was being sarcastic. I said, okay, so there's room here to chat about how this could improve process, how this could improve people, how this could improve culture, how it can improve your ability, right? A lot of advanced manufacturing employers right now cannot scale because they cannot get staff to stay. Right. They cannot scale and take on new contracts and increase revenue and recover from the pandemic because they cannot attract and retain the staff that they need to do the job. They cannot afford anymore to ignore the fact that they have for 25 years coasted on the existing talent pool and made no effort to change the barriers that exist within the workplace. And I'm not talking just the neurodiverse community, but as a woman on a shop floor, I could take it. That wouldn't be a problem. There needs to be across the board education and growth and understanding. And as the individuals who might be problematic retire, this is an opportunity. We are at a key point right now in advanced manufacturing and trades to make change that will positively impact the Canadian economy. If the pandemic taught us nothing, we need to keep as much manufacturing and production in Canada as possible, not only for our labor market, but for our economy, for our for our everything, for our GOP, like whatever you want to attach it to. Our reliance on foreign production, like I say, if the pandemic taught us nothing, ignoring this problem cost Canada a lot, and we need to fix it. And this is one of the ways. The neurodiverse talent pool is a low risk group of individuals that are loyal, that are honest, that are intelligent, that are capable, that want to work and want to work hard for you. They want to be in a role where their contribution is valued. They want to be able to take on challenges. They want to do it in a safe workplace. And we're not talking inclusion in a woo-woo, let's sing kumbaya way. We're talking about not allowing supervisors and lead hands to scream at people for a mistake that they made. We're talking about a couple of small changes to the interview process that make it easier for the people doing the interviewing and make it easier to find good candidates. We're talking about taking responsibility for the education that you provide employees around leadership and communication development, and not for your managers and not for your CEOs. They've already done all of that. They're good. You need to recognize the value of providing that education to the people on the shop floor who help to pay your salaries and help make your company successful.
Yeah, no, that makes some sense. I just quickly want to acknowledge we got Carol Mitchell Lynn. She's on YouTube.
She loves MacGyver.
Yeah, exactly. She like that comment a lot. And then
I saw
Mike is has a question. Maybe go a little bit deeper in your, what do you suggest for interview process to actually help better understand whether or not an individual is autistic, and how they're going to be able to succeed in a specific role.
So that's also role specific. So in advanced manufacturing, I would say a skills test is one of the best ways to determine that, because it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is as long as you can do the actual skills. From an office job or things like that, that is a little more tricky, but you can do skills tests with that as well. So if part of the role, if it's an admin role, for an example, and a lot of that depends on using specific electronic tools, do a skills test. Make sure that individual, and that's for anybody. Like, this isn't just an autism thing, that's an everybody thing. Some folk are desperate for work and they'll say, yes, I'm an expert in Excel. And meanwhile, they couldn't do a sum if they tried. So doing that piece. If you're going to use a recruitment agency, then make sure that they are doing skills tests on some level. Right now, there is no process to do a skills assessment for advanced manufacturing, and we're working on a solution for that as well. We've got a plan in place to open the first Ability Hub in Ontario that focuses on leadership, advanced manufacturing, trades, and entrepreneurship for the neurodiverse community. And part of that is going to be to develop a skills testing process for trades. So the role to find out if somebody's suitable for it or not is actually more incumbent on the interviewer, how they pose the questions, staying out of open-ended abstract questions like, tell me about yourself. I mean, we've all sat on
opening a can of worms with an autistic individual.
Like, what's with anybody? You're like, well, what do you mean? Do you want me to tell you about when I got arrested in Florida when I was 18? Like, that's a great story.
You might get that with an autistic individual.
Get that with me because it's funny.
I say one of the worst things you can ask an autistic individual is, how is your day? Because they will probably tell you everything that went on during that day from the time they woke up, unless they've been taught that, no, how your day is like
in that moment.
It's that moment, has your day been good or been bad?
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think we need to get away from these weird random questions that don't have a lot to do with the job. Organizations need to figure out if it's a skills fit or a culture fit, because a lot of skills for certain jobs can be taught. As long as there's aptitude and intellect, like, you're good to go. It's whether the individual fits into the company culture and whether you've done the work to identify what's important to your company culture. And it's also including the people they're going to be working with potentially in the interview process. Because if you were a manager way up here and the last time you actually sat in the job that you're interviewing for was 5 years ago, then really what the hell do you know about the job on a day-to-day basis? You don't know anything. You can't, because that's not what you do.
Right.
So I think it's checking back in with the team. We've talked about it here that as we continue to grow as a technology company, every new employee is going to spend a week or more in customer service. They're going to spend time at each desk so that they understand how the job works and having open and lateral communication. I would love to see managers have to go down on the shop floor for a week at a time. I would, if you've gone from being on the line to being a lead to being a manager, I would love that they have to go for a couple of days once a month and get in touch with the reality of the job. I think that holds true for any job.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept, and I can see a ton of value in that as well.
It's not logical, it's not logical for some, but
yeah, maybe too logical, right?
That's also an issue. We found
so when you're talking about, yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
With our project, that we did. So just to give you a little context for that. So we ended up with 59 companies that came in and spoke with us on some level, and 26 that were interviewed. We started out with 26 autistic candidates and ended with 12 because we had quite an extensive but inclusive screening process, which included personal interview, which included attendance at a information session. It also included how the individual communicated with us. So if they didn't answer emails, if they didn't answer information, if they showed up late to sessions and all those kinds of things, that was part of the screening process as well. They went through 3 different levels of assessment. So we used the Enneagram in the workplace, which is the only personality tool we have found so far that includes stress and anxiety as an impactor on job performance. And then we also used the career personality profiler, which is built on the Holland codes and the Big 5. They also went through a level of assessment with our project partner, which is a psychology-based advanced manufacturing rules specific assessment tool. Out of the 25 candidates, that ended up going through the whole process, we ended up with 12, and 10 out of the 12, or actually I shouldn't say this, all of the candidates met the criteria from, I think it's numerical, I've got to find it here, sorry, I'll get the language wrong. It was numerical, spatial relations, and another category. I apologize, I have the slide. They passed all of that. The overall job fit and the roles that we used were CNC programmers, CNC, oh golly, it's gone out of my head now. CNC programmer, CNC operator, and the third CNC role, and then mold maintenance technician. They were all deemed good fit. They were all deemed intellectually capable and had the aptitude and the interest to succeed in the role. Where they fell down, understandably, and Jason will start nodding in a second, was the social relation processes that they were tested on. All of them struggled with, according to the testing, advocacy and team communication. Some because they hadn't worked in a role like that, and some because those are the intrinsic challenges to an autistic individual. But all of them would be successful with coaching. So we never said that I did kick one person out of the program. They just didn't pass across the board. I mean, communication was an issue. Participation in the sessions was an issue. And I just thought, you know what? This isn't an industry where we can do this. You are not going to be safe. Most important of all, you would not be safe in this kind of role. You wouldn't succeed. And so at the end of it all, we categorized 3 individuals, actually changed their education and career plans to move into CNC related roles. My son is in welding and fabrication at Mohawk College right now and has actually been already kind of pre-offered a job. He's going to do welding, and he's also going to become an electrical apprentice. And so my husband went to a company and they're like, well, we like you and everything, because they wanted to offer my husband a job. He's like, but we'll hire your son without you. Nice.
Cool.
So the candidates were not yet. They needed competency gap coaching around communication and advocacy, and they needed shop floor exposure so that they could understand better what the role entailed. Well, we were really pleasantly surprised that there was no accommodation in the testing process. So I don't want you to think that we developed a psychology-based test specifically for an autistic individual. We intentionally didn't do that to show that there is no intellectual deficit,
Right.
that individuals are fully capable of going through these assessments and fully capable of doing this job. They just might need coaching in other areas, as do the employers.
Well, that aligns with what we heard as well, for sure. I mean, it's more the social part of it. It's communication. It is the environment, understanding that a person is not necessarily, like in the last event, in the last broadcast we had, they're not necessarily disabled. They're uniquely abled. They're just a little different, and they have some capability as others don't have. And as long as you just understand that communication, you gotta kind of have some empathy around that. They might, if you have open-ended questions or anything like that, that they might not 100% understand what you're trying to say, to be more clear about it. I had a quick story when you talked about before those questions, or those questions that you don't really want an answer for, whatever. It's like when I just came to the US, it was like 25 years ago, everybody would walk by me and say, "How are you doing?" I came from Denmark, and when we walk by them, we would say hi. We wouldn't say, "How are you doing?" I'm like, oh yeah, how am I doing? You know, I'm gonna have to think about what's the answer to that. So
you actually want to know how
they,
I'm doing? I need to give you the
they
polite
don't
word.
really want to know. They don't really want to know exactly. So
Yeah.
no open-ended questions. Just be clear what you want out of it, and then you have it's really just about knowing, and then that knowing drives, as I said before, they could at least, or in most cases that we heard of, drives the entire culture in the company, and that's a huge
That's where some
positive.
changes absolutely, need to happen. And I had an interesting discussion with one of my husband's colleagues, who's a diehard Millwright, and he's sort of the epitome of the crusty Millwright guy. And I know a number of trade folk now, so I say this with respect, but he was interesting. And there's an individual on their shop floor who's autistic, who has been promoted from floor millwright to like a supervisor. But their happy place is building stuff and fixing projects and what have you. And I don't know that the individual was made aware of how much the role would change going from shop floor millwright to millwright supervisor. So consequently, if they see a project that's not done yet and they have the skills and abilities, which this guy confirmed they do, they will just go ahead into somebody's toolbox. And we talked before about no touching the tools. And they will go work on the project and stay late and get it done, because in their mind, it's due, it's got to get finished. Everybody else has gone home. I'm still here. I have the skills and abilities, so I'm going to do it. Right? Well, you're a supervisor now. That's not what you do. And rather than having a direct conversation, what they're engaging in is some passive aggressive, whatever the comments are. And the individual I was speaking to said, well, I told him to stay out of my tools. And I said, and did he? Well, yeah, he just went to somebody else's toolbox. I'm like, but all you said was, stay out of my tools. Well, yeah. I'm like, what you might have meant was, you're now a shop supervisor, so you're not supposed to be in the tools because that's not your role anymore and whatever. All he heard was, stay out of my tools. Has anybody sat down with that individual and made it really clear through checklist, through job description, whatever, that this is now their role and this is the impact that these other actions are having on the shop floor. Well, no, he should understand that. I said, okay, let's go back for a second. Is he a good millwright? Well, yeah. Does he do a good job when he's being a millwright? Well, yeah. So he understands what you're doing, how to do it, and how to do it safely. Oh yeah, the guy is so safe. He will spend X amount of time making sure that things are tightened properly, and because he doesn't want to create a problem and he doesn't want to whatever. I'm like, that's great. Because the opposite of that lands my husband in the emergency room. So, safety good. When he was a millwright on the floor with you, did you respect what he did as a millwright? Well, yeah. Has anybody given him any training to move from a shop floor millwright to a supervisor around communication, job expectation, or leadership? Well, no, I don't think so. Like, would you do well if nobody did that for you? Now, I know this guy very well, and I know he would not. So,
did he know, though?
I said, so do you understand that your process is broken? Do you understand that this guy's trying to do his best, that he's focused on delivering a good solution, getting the projects done, meeting the deadlines, he's good at his job, he knows he can do it. And passive aggressive, I said, I know what I can tell you right now what you've been saying to him and how you've been saying it. That's not working. That's not his fault.
Yeah.
Your floor needs to change. Your communication skills need to change. And like, do the checklist, do the time. Well, you can't say that anymore. You can't say he should just know. You should just know it's not a good idea to be passive aggressive and be a little turkey. But here we are having this conversation. Shouldn't you know better than how to deal with it than that? Oh, there we go. It's so easy.
Oh, that's a great example. Yeah.
It's not complicated.
That's a great example of.
Sorry, Jan.
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of internet issues right now, so I think I'm a little bit delayed, maybe, I don't know. But I was saying that's a great example of first of all how it's not working, and a very easy understanding of how it can work, right? And how you can, as long as you just have a little empathy, have a little understanding that communication is key here, and then think about what can you change to make the situation better or make the situation work.
If employers were curious, if they remain curious about learning opportunities and training opportunities and building up their staff, and I think right now a lot of employers are hesitant to do that because they think if they invest in their people in that capacity, people are going to jump, and then that's a waste of investment for them. But you're improving the whole industry. So if that person jumps, it has nothing to do with the training you've provided and everything to do with the experience they're having with your organization. And most people reward investment with loyalty for a certain amount of time. It will never be forever. But when we invest in an individual, we improve the whole industry. So we have to change that investment mindset, that when you invest in training, and this is not a sales pitch from me, right? Like, it is a fact. When you invest in training, when you invest in supporting your people, when you invest and show them that you care about their career with you, it comes back in a positive way.
Absolutely.
And we're at 1:30.
Yeah. With that, thanks really for joining us here today. It's been a great conversation. I really have enjoyed it. What I'd like to do is to give you and Jason chance for last thoughts before we close this podcast down. So, any last thoughts from you, Elizabeth? Just on telling employers, how do you get into this? How can you open yourself up to these opportunities, and who to talk to?
So you are welcome to visit SperoCareersCanada.ca. We do have employer toolkits and the white paper that we created and what have you. But honestly, part of the best thing to do is work with somebody with lived experience or an organization that has somebody with lived experience. It's not enough to take the word of an organization. You need somebody who's been on the floor and had the experience and lives as a neurodiverse individual every day. That's where the good stuff is. Just be curious and be open to learning and understanding that the current system requires some investment and innovation.
Thanks very much. Jason, any last thoughts from you?
Last thoughts for me are going to be pretty similar to a lot of the other episodes, such as don't be afraid to start having the conversations. It starts really there is have those conversations within your organization, and it's not just limited to those in management and supervisory. Some of my worst experiences have been on the shop floor because of those old crusty tradesmen. And some people don't know
You were wonderful.
I am a tradesman as well. I have a 309A electrical license, and I had put in all the requirements for the master electricians. So I have worked as a tradesman, and I'm quite familiar with a lot of the old mindset that still exists within the trades. And you know, you have to educate the people on the floor as well, the machine operators, the tradesmen, the maintenance individuals, that just because there's that maybe one employee who doesn't socialize so much and is highly focused on what he's doing and maybe works over the break or through lunch, it's not because they're not social or they don't want to socialize or they're trying to make you look bad. They just maybe don't understand the culture of what's going on around them. And you just need to communicate and explain. The biggest accommodation you can make is communication.
Mentorship.
Mentorship, I would rank as second.
Yeah.
And those are two very easy things for employers to implement that have a great deal of impact on how an organization performs. They don't only just help those people on the spectrum, they help everybody involved. Right? If you've got great communication and you've got a really strong mentorship program, everybody coming into your organization is going to do well.
Yep.
Absolutely.
When businesses can't scale,
Well,
that
again,
was the one that shot. Sorry, Jan.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
That was just one of the final points is your business cannot scale right now. You cannot take on new contracts. You cannot deliver more product until you fix your labor market shortage. It's as simple as that. So you're going to pay now or you're going to pay later.
And this is a great opportunity to do that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. With that, I again thank you very much for joining. Thanks, Jason, for hosting this series, and I'm looking forward to the last two episodes, which is going to be in 2 weeks and in 4 weeks. I want to thank everybody for joining. Thanks for your time. And again, this was Industry 4.0 Club, our Thursday broadcast on people, process, and culture. And this was our fourth installment of the Autism Manufacturing. We were here joined today with Elizabeth Plouffe from Spero Careers Canada, talking about how she and her organization is helping companies, manufacturers to get into hiring people on the spectrum, understanding what it takes and what it doesn't take, and how it actually helps overall get involved. So reach out, look at Spero Careers Canada, and see what kind of tools and resources they have available for you. Again, if you like having these types of conversations as much as we do, please join our scheduled rooms. We have them every week. Monday, Wednesday, 1 week, Tuesday, Thursday, the following week, and so forth, and 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Central. And you can find us on www.industry40club.com, and of course here on LinkedIn as well. So with that, thanks again, and we will close our broadcast for today. And again, join us Monday next week, Women in Manufacturing, and Wednesday next week, where we have our fireside chat. Thanks very much. Have a great day.